Hi, I'm Zibby Owens, and you're listening to Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. This 30-minute podcast features a new author interviewed by me every single day, 365 days a year, for about 30 minutes. I am also the publisher for Zibby Books, which publishes 12 books a year in fiction and memoir. Our books are already out now. You can check it out on zibbybooks.com. And we have a magazine called Zibby Mag, where we have lots of wonderful essays and lifestyle features. That's at zibbymag.com. We have classes at zibbyclasses.com. And I recently opened a bookstore in LA called Zibby's Bookshop at 1113 Montana Avenue at 11th Street in Santa Monica. I hope that you are able to enjoy some of our other offerings. But this here podcast is the basis of all of it and started in 2018. And no matter what I do, this is basically my favorite thing. Enjoy. Julia Bartz is the author of The Writing Retreat, a novel. Julia is a Brooklyn-based writer and practicing therapist. Her fiction writing has appeared in the South Dakota Review, in Digest Magazine, and more. The Writing Retreat is her first novel. Welcome, Julia. Thank you so much for coming on Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books to discuss The Writing Retreat.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Could you please tell listeners what your book is about?
Yes. So The Writing Retreat is about a woman named Alex who has pretty much given up on her dreams of becoming a published writer when she receives the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to attend a writing retreat that's being put on by her favorite author, the horror novelist Rosa Vallow. So when Alex gets to the retreat, she finds out that not only is it a retreat, it's also a contest. So Rosa is asking all of the attendees to write an entire book from scratch during 1 month's time. It's a lot. And at the end of the month, she is going to pick her favorite and give that author a $1 million book deal. So Alex buckles down, is working on her book, but soon starts seeing strange things happening around Rosa's potentially haunted estate. And when one of the attendees goes missing, Alex must find out what's really happening at the writing retreat, or she may disappear too.
Ooh, that's such a good pitch. Where did this idea come from? And have you ever tried to write a novel in a month?
Yeah, funny you asked that, because I actually had to go back through my files because I really couldn't remember when exactly I started writing this book. It had been a long time. And I realized that the very first iteration was actually a NaNoWriMo book. So NaNoWriMo is National Novel Writing Month. So it was, almost 10 years ago, late 2014. My sister, Andrea Bartz, and another friend who's a writer, Leah Conan, and I decided to do NaNoWriMo together. And so I think I was the only one that actually got to the word count for the month. But for anyone who doesn't know, NaNoWriMo is an annual kind of online community where people attempt to write, I don't think it's an entire book, but I think it's like 60,000 words or something around there. So it's significant. It's a lot of writing, and you're supposed to do it every day and kind of cheer each other on. So it felt so apropos that was the very first version of the story that I hadn't even remembered.
Oh my gosh. And you just dug it up, or how did you know that you had tried it at some point?
I literally went through my Google Docs and was just kind of, like searching for different terms. And Alex has been Alex since day one. That was always her name. And it was a different version. It actually verged a little on sci-fi. So it was kind of a different book, but similarly, Alex had gone through this friend breakup with Ren and kind of fled the city. And she was actually the sleepwalker in the story and was waking up in strange places and having these weird dreams where Rosa was coming to her in those dreams and communicating with her. And Rosa actually turned out to be an alien. So that was a little bit different.
Yeah, a little different.
So went through a lot of changes. But I do remember the idea of setting it at a writing retreat that kind of landed on me. It was a couple of years later, and I had set the book aside because it wasn't really working. But then when I had this idea of Rosa being this horror novelist, setting it at her estate, that's when everything really fell into place.
Interesting. Well, I like how you set it up, even just with like the competition among writing friends, right, from the start. And also feeling like someone like Ursula was really going to make it big versus Ren versus like, how do you know among your group of friends who's going to make it? I mean, it's such a crapshoot. And yet there can be predictions and I don't know.
Yeah, it's always a question, and people, their writing journey or publishing journey can be on a very different timeline. I think if people keep at it for years and years, eventually you get to that point, but you never know when that will happen.
And have you gone to a writing retreat?
I actually have not.
What? Even after this came out? Have you been invited? You have to, or anything? Or
No, maybe that's embarrassing that I haven't been invited yet. But yeah, I think that's one of the reasons that I said it at a writing retreat, because I always kind of had this fantasy of what a writing retreat would be like and how it would be just so incredible to be able to focus on that, on your writing, and then also be in this community of writers, because, writing is so solitary that, it can get a little lonely sometimes. So it is really nice to have people around you. And I have many friends who are writers, but to have that kind of concentrated time where all you have to do is write and you're surrounded by other people who are doing the same thing, that always seemed so fun to me. But it's hard to do sometimes. The writing retreats that are funded are extremely hard to get into. And ones where you have to pay, it can be kind of financially difficult. And if you're working in a full-time job, which I used to, it can also be hard to take the time off. So I think it was fun for me to just kind of allow myself to dream up, like, what would my ideal writing retreat be like? Of course, in the book, it goes off the rails a bit.
Okay. Well, we do these retreats like called Zibby retreats or whatever. We're doing them quarterly. So you have to come and be one of the people. And then it will be its own like writing retreat. You can teach like a writing thing if you want or something. I don't know, if you want.
Ah, no, I would love that. That sounds great. Sign me up.
Okay. I'm going to do it. Maybe next year with, we have a book coming out by Swan Huntley that is about like ghostwriting and the writer relationship. And maybe we could do a whole writing thing around that. Okay. Okay. I'll be in touch. That'll be fun. But see, now you'll be invited and yeah, that'll be great. I think people will be excited. Okay, so you started it in NaNoWriMo. You've gone through multiple versions. What is it about this topic or which part of this has sort of grabbed your consciousness that you couldn't let it go?
Yeah, so I think the piece of it that I couldn't let go of was the kind of this challenge that I was going through at the time of feeling very frustrated as a writer. I said a moment ago that, I think if people keep at it, you'll eventually get there. But I had actually written 2 books before this that I tried to get published that did not work out. The first one, I wasn't able to get an agent. The second one, I did have an agent, and we worked together closely for quite some time. And then she decided to part ways with me, which I've found out is very common. Like, it happens all the time. But for me, it was devastating because I felt just completely back at square one. And so during that time, I was actually switching careers into becoming a therapist because I was like, I don't know if this writing thing is going to work out. So I had a day job, but I had always focused on the writing. So that at that point, I had to kind of figure out something else that I would feel passionate about. And so it was in the midst of a career change. I was in grad school. And after the second book didn't work out, I really wasn't sure if I was going to keep going with it, or if I was going to step away from the writing, maybe forever. And I decided that, again, something about this story, it felt like it would be extremely cathartic to write it. And I also decided to use it almost as an exercise of exploring like my psyche. Since I was learning to become a therapist, I was doing a lot of, self-diagnosing and just going to those like really dark places, the unconscious, like the things that I'm not always aware of that are there. And particularly shadow parts, which I was very interested in, which are parts of us that we repress, usually when we're young, because we're told that they're not acceptable. So for women and girls, that can have a lot to do with anger, rage, shame, sexuality. So those were all things that I was interested in and thought that if I did write this book, I could use it, almost as an exercise for myself and really, also write it without focusing on the outcome. Is this going to get published? Because I knew if I did that, I just wouldn't be able to write it.
So what did you learn after doing a deep dive into the dark side of Julia?
It was really fun, honestly. There's I don't want to spoil anything, but there may be one or more psychopaths in the book. And that in particular felt really kind of fun and interesting to explore because psychopathic women are like the opposite of how we usually feel. Women have to like be caretakers or, you know, be polite or, put themselves last. And psychopaths are the opposite. Like they're so self-interested and they don't really care about other people except as like items of, people that they can manipulate. So it was fun and enjoyable. And I really encourage people, clients that I see or friends or whoever, to tap into those parts of us that we are a little bit scared of because, it doesn't mean that we're going to do anything bad, but just being aware of it can really teach us a lot about ourselves.
Very true. Okay, psychopathic women. Maybe I'm not inviting you to this retreat. I don't know. Maybe this is a horrible mistake. Tell me about your first two books. What were they about?
Thank you for asking. Yeah, the first book was a novel in stories because I didn't have the confidence that I could write a full book. So I was trying to kind of trick myself into writing a full-length book. So it was a novel in stories about 3 different women who disappear on purpose and exploring the idea of that. The stories were told by other characters who are close to them. So you kind of find out slowly like what's going on with each of them and where they went and why. So I had a lot of fun writing that. And then the second one, funnily enough or depressingly enough, was actually a near future novel in which Roe v. Wade has been overturned.
No way.
Yeah. And I wrote it, I think it was 2016, 2017.
Maybe it's time to pull that one out.
I know. Yeah. That was, very scary. I did not think that would actually happen anytime soon. And in the book, there's a group of women that call themselves Femme Fury. And it's kind of this new age, like riot girl punk rock movement that, goes up against those in charge of this decision.
Wow. Wait, so tell me, after you parted ways with the agent and you wrote this draft, how did you get your agent this time? And tell me about this whole like publication. It must have felt really great after all that.
It did. Yeah. With this book, another thing that I also focused on with this book was the plot. Like I love horror, I love thrillers. So I wanted to make this book as suspenseful and kind of like page turning as possible. And I think that really helped me. So when I completed the book, I'd had some friends read it. I went back and edited. And then I remember I was going to Santa Fe with a friend, I guess it was about 2 years ago now. And I remember sending out my first batch of agent queries. So what you do is you send like an email out to people. There's kind of a format where you share what your book is about and who you are. Before I sent those out before getting on the plane. And over that trip, one person reached out to me and we met up when I was back in New York, and she was wonderful. But that led to me letting the other agents know that she made an offer. And so a couple other people wanted to speak with me as well. And at the end of the day, I ended up going with Alexandra Machinist, who is incredible. And she's actually my sister's agent as well. So that was, kind of a funny, nice thing that happened. And she's been great. Like I couldn't ask for a better agent.
Wow. And then what about selling the book to publishers and all that?
Yeah, that process was fairly quick and smooth as well. We had a couple offers. So I spoke with a few editors and I decided to go with Emily Bessler at Atria at Simon & Schuster because, she's just a very cool person, but also I felt that some other people were hesitating a little bit on the kind of the violence in the book. And Emily was just completely like, yes, let's do it. Like, I'm all for it. She fully supported everything crazy that happens in the book. And so I felt like she was definitely the right person to work with.
Fellow dark side, shadow sister.
She was the editor for You too. So that felt like, okay, she knows how to edit like dark books.
Yeah. And what is it like having another writer in the family? Like, tell me about that whole dynamic.
Yeah. Andy and I have always been writers from childhood. We would write stories together. We would write stories on our own. And she became a journalist, magazine journalist and travel journalist and at a certain point wrote her first book. And so that was a couple of years. I'm trying to think what year that was. I think it was 2018 when she got the offer. So she was ahead of me by a couple of years. So that was actually really helpful because I kind of saw her process going through the different publishing stages. And she has been extremely helpful for me during this time too. Like I can always call her, text her with any questions or issues that I'm having, and she knows exactly what to do.
That's really convenient. Built-in support network. That's great. Yeah. What types of books do you like to read? Are you drawn to dark fiction as well?
Yes. I love thrillers. I love horror. Like I love anything that just keeps me invested and like trying to figure out what's going on. And that's been for a long time. I would say like early influences were Shirley Jackson, of course, Stephen King, Margaret Atwood, like I guess also people who were able to combine very intriguing stories with characters that you really cared about.
Mm-hmm. What's the latest great horror or thriller you've read?
Oh, I'm currently reading The Spite House by Johnny Compton, and it's fantastic. Yeah, I hadn't even heard of what spite houses were, but it's such an interesting concept. They're basically houses that people build to piss other people off. Yeah. So they're like, this house in the book is like up on a hill overlooking other buildings, including an orphanage. So it's, yeah, every time you look up at the sky, this like really ugly house is looking down on you. So it's such a brilliant concept. And of course, in the book, it's haunted.
Oh. So what are you working on for your next book?
So I'm deep into my next book. I'm feeling very excited about it. And I'm not sharing too much yet, but I would say that if you like the writing retreat, you'll probably like this book as well. And it kind of focuses around the idea of how affected we are by our community and the people around us, sometimes to a horrifying degree.
Horrifying degree. Okay. Interesting. What do your parents make of all this? What do they make of you and your sister? And what's it like at like a family gathering?
Yeah, that's such a good question. They are both in the Midwest. And yeah, Andy and I see them, at different points during the year. And they're very proud. It's funny because my mom is a huge reader, and she was one that really encouraged Andy and I to read a lot as children too. But she's all about it. She loves all of our books and is very supportive. And my dad is also very supportive, although he's not a huge reader and definitely not a reader of kind of horror and thriller books. So I think he's a little like, doesn't know where this all came from. Yeah, but it is funny. Yeah, certain family members, I say, like, I'm not sure if you need to read this. Fair warning, there's sex and violence. So just so you know.
Wow, that's funny. You can all just trade your books around the table and freak each other out. It's great. Yeah.
I do get emails from family members who sometimes I'm a little surprised even by the family members who have read the books and enjoyed them. So that's a nice thing too.
That is a nice thing. And what do you do when you're not writing?
So I am a therapist and a creative coach as well. So yeah, it's kind of nice that I can make my own schedule and see clients like where I want to. And yeah, I love being a therapist, and the creative coaching is a little bit newer, but kind of the perfect marriage of the therapy and the writing background. So the coaching is more about helping people bring their works into the world, or if they're having like certain challenges that are coming up for them creatively, I can help them with that.
So less like manuscript, less in the manuscript and more in your head?
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. I don't edit, but I'm here to talk about anything because, yeah, it can be frustrating, to go back to that word, and challenging at really any stage of the writing or publishing process. There can be things coming up. So some people appreciate having someone to talk to about it.
Do you help with people getting bad reviews and how to cope with that feeling?
Oh my goodness. I haven't yet for clients, but that is something that I talk about with writer friends who are going through that, and myself included, because yeah, if you go to my Goodreads, you will see a lot of good reviews and a lot of bad reviews. And it is a practice to not really take it personally.
Yeah, it's hard.
It is, yeah. And I think writers are usually very sensitive people. So it can be, it can be a little hurtful if someone tags you on Instagram or something. And I do kind of stay away from Goodreads now after the bad reviews started coming in, which is what most authors will tell you to do that. But I see them here and there, and ultimately people are totally, welcome to their opinion. And, my book is out there. So of course you can have any feedback or reaction that you want, but I don't always need to see it.
Do you feel that people who get, quote unquote writer's block or just are blocked sort of creatively, and is there something that is a shared thing among like that issue? Like, where is that coming from?
Yeah, that is something I talk about with people a lot, because as in therapy, like resistance comes up. So there's something that's stopping you from doing what you want to do, which is writing a book or story or whatever. And there are definitely themes around that. And I think the most common ones are either self-criticism or fear of what other people will think.
When I started the memoir, the like 8 millionth version that ended up becoming my memoir, I put in like all caps and bold at the top, "No one will read this but you."
Yeah.
And I literally like couldn't start until I had that. And then I was like, okay, fine. I'll trick myself into writing it.
I just got goosebumps. Yeah, I think that's such a good idea, even for fiction too. Just like telling yourself that no, read it, just do whatever you want. But especially for memoirs, like I have such respect for memoir writers, because I think that, that can be an opportunity for even more fears to come up.
Yeah. Well, maybe you're welcome to steal my idea here for your clients, but even having like a second document where you're like, this is the one no one's going to see. And that's the one, it ended up being, a whole book. So
absolutely.
Not that you need tips. This is your job, but
Oh, it's helpful, because with the new book that I'm writing, like I haven't written a first draft of something new in so long. So as I'm writing, I'm just like, I'm such a terrible writer.
Yeah.
Awful. Like, this is like so bad. But I have to remind myself that, this is just how it is on the first draft. It's just like, you can allow it to be as bad as you want it to be. And that's a good reminder. Like, no one's going to see this first draft except for me. So I need to just let myself write it.
Yeah. As long as you have something down there, you can make it much better. Paint over it, But yes, very common. It's so easy for us to get in our own ways, not just in writing, but in so many things, but particularly where we're just trying to be creative and, I don't know, try something new and do it alone with you and the page. It's almost like a perfect recipe for anxiety, really, but anyway. Yeah, take what's in your brain and then show it to the entire world. Okay, go. Good luck. Have fun.
It's so true. Yeah. And that's why I think it's really important to have a community around you of, people that you're close to who love you no matter what, but then also people who are doing the same thing that you're doing, who get it. Like, I think the most helpful thing for me has been having Andy and like other friends who have been through this and know how strange and, it feels very exposed. It feels very vulnerable. So it's good to just have people you can talk to about that.
Yeah, for sure. That's so true. Well, maybe you'll meet more friends at our writing retreat.
Fingers crossed.
There you go. Well, thank you so much, Julia, for coming on Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Thank you for your book and for sharing all of this great information. And I will look forward to seeing you soon.
Good. Thank you so much. I had such a good time.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. Okay. Have a great day.
Thanks. You too.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Zibby Owens and at Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Also sign up for my newsletter at zibbyowens.com and sign up for my virtual book club and meet lots of authors on Zoom every other week. Thanks so much to Steve and Ryan at Texture Sound for the sound editing. And thank you to Morning Moon Productions for providing this fantastic intro and outro music.